Good morning, everyone. Lots going on, and I know I always say that, but man, it is just unbelievable how much is continually happening. It's like a fire hose, right? I can't keep up. And I hope that you understand that this isn't all the news. There's so much more that's going on. I mean, especially if you live outside of Ontario, right? There's so much more happening, but still, I try and keep up, and there's so much. And I try and tell you and update you about stories that I've talked about before, just so, I don't know, it seems like there's a sense of finishing things off, right? So remember the Peel officer who hugged the COVID-19 protesters, right? And he refused to close down Huff's gym. He is reinstated. He's been reinstated. A Peel regional police officer who was captured on video by Global News hugging demonstrators protesting COVID-19 restrictions and accused a journalist of agitating them has been reinstated. It was a global journalist, and this is a global article. So got to keep that in the first paragraph. He told me that I was agitating them. Make sure that's in there. The officer was suspended on April 16th after a protest was held outside of Huff Gym in Mississauga, which reopened despite COVID-19 restrictions. Inspector Raj Beering, sorry, I've got that wrong, told Global News Sunday morning the officer's paid suspension was lifted a few days ago, and he said a review is still underway by professional standards. A police spokesperson later added the sergeant was reinstated last Thursday and will remain on administrative duties until the conclusion of the investigation. So he gets to sit at a desk and do paperwork. So it's less fun, not as fun as like a regular day, right? But glad he's reinstated, glad he's back working, and I hope it all goes well for him. I hope that professional standards agrees that what he did was okay. Hannah Banana says, we have a delusional person experiencing some sort of fiscal psychotic break in charge of our country's finances. I thought, man, yeah, that's pretty accurate. Ms. Freeland, she's just not ready. So this is, when asked if government had a plan to get back to balance, Finance Minister Keir Freeland says her projections are prudent, citing a $354 billion deficit in 2021 when the PBO had projected a $360 billion deficit. So there you go. He was wrong, and we were right. It wasn't 360 billion. It was 354 billion. No, really, she says that. Here, watch. It's very funny.
Has your government abandoned a promise to get back to balance? I know you're talking about $30 billion deficit. Maybe that's the new zero in 2021. Has your government abandoned a promise ever to balance the books?
So you just quoted the parliamentary budget officer. And I do need to point out one thing. He also predicted that we would have a deficit for 2021 of $360 billion or more, and we've actually come in below that. We've come in at $354 billion. So that to me just underscores the care and the prudence of our projections and our forecasting. When it comes to debt and deficits and going forward, we have been clear, we were clear in the budget document, that our commitment to Canadians is a declining debt to GDP ratio, which we show here clearly, and unwinding the COVID-related deficits, which we also show with a deficit that falls by 25, 26 to...
And they go back, they're saying just under 1% of GDP. That's how she finishes. But still, I think that it's an interesting thing to say, we didn't quite hit it. We came just underneath it, right? Just shy of that $360 billion limit set by the PBO, right? So what are you complaining about? It's not like we're poor or anything. We got lots of room, lots of maneuvering ability. Any crisis, we're ready for it. We've got a couple $1 billion, just, $6 billion ceiling, or cushion. That's lots of cushion, right? Typical federal government tactic, do the big funding announcement in the budget and then blame provinces if it stalls. Liberals have been promising a national daycare plan for decades, speed of childcare plan up to the provinces and territories. So this is just kind of a liberal trick. Like, they're going to give the provinces money to do their own daycare plan. And the problem with it is that it won't get rolled out, right? Like, healthcare, even when healthcare exchanges are promised by, when the federal government tries to get into provincial government's responsibility, and provincial government is responsible for delivery of services to the people, right? So when the federal government starts trying to get into it, and Jagmeet Singh is just terribly irresponsible with his suggestions all the time, talking about building healthcare and blah, 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 blah. But the federal government's trying to get in on it, and really all they can do is give money, because, like, the hospitals are governed by the province, right? Like the delivery, all of that stuff is governed by the province. They have to go through the province to facilitate it. So it's just money. And usually it goes into a big budgetary pot, and it's supposed to be earmarked for healthcare. But I mean, good luck, right? Like, good luck. How much money is gone? Like, they just spend, right? Like, it's like if you have $1,000 and then you spend $10,000, does it matter that 300 of that $10,000 was budgeted for like video games? Like, really? Like, does it matter? Who cares, man? Why don't you spend $20,000, right? I've saved $1,000 and 300 is for video games, and we've spent $20,000, but I've got that 300 for video games, right? Right. Sure you do. It's in there, I guess, if you want. So inflation rate doubles to 2.2%. StatsCan will update consumer price index to reflect pandemic prices. Gasoline up 35%, eggs up 11.4%. No, there's no inflation in Canada. We don't have inflation in Canada. Inflation's a bad word in Canada, isn't it? Right? No, we don't have inflation. We've got good feelings and money to spare to give to the WHO and anybody who wants money. We've got lots of money. We've got people. We've got money. What do you need, right? Welcome to Canada, right? Who needs to take care of us? Ian Brody says the two people who report directly to the Prime Minister and who heard the allegations against a Prime Minister appointee should be asked, did you tell the Prime Minister or did you decide to do nothing? And if you told him, what did he decide to do? And if not, why did you decide not to tell him? I think these are good questions. And I think like this is talking about Saijan and the ombudsman who brought the allegations against Vance, and everybody knew about it, right? Like everybody, meaning the brass at the military, like military brass all knew. Saijan knew. The Prime Minister's Chief of Staff knew. So if the Prime Minister, I've been saying probably if the Chief of Staff knew, the Prime Minister knew. But maybe Telford is a terrible Chief of Staff. Maybe she would look at that and go, you know who doesn't need to know about this? The boss. The boss does not need to know. We can just, right? And plausible deniability. He could say, what sexual allegations? And not be lying, right? So maybe they're protecting him. But we should know that, right? We should know that because you assume, I did anyway, if the Chief of Staff knows that the boss would know. But maybe they decided, no, we're not going to tell him. And we're not going to tell him to protect him. And by protecting him, they're protecting the country or something. But now there's questions. And now they should answer, right? Who knew? And did Trudeau know? And if you didn't tell him, why? And that would lead to maybe a new Chief of Staff. And if you did tell him, what did he do? Anything? Did he tell you to do anything? Was there anything done about this since 2018? Who initiated that, right? Like there are so many questions. Oh, questions abound, right? Very, very interesting stuff. I don't know that we're going to get any satisfaction from this. Here is more alarming stuff. This is alarming, says Ryan O'Connor. Ontario's courts have done an incredible job adapting to virtual hearings and online filing. They're even going so far as to have judges fill in from down in the tropics, their vacation homes in Turks and Caicos and stuff, to make sure they could continue doing trial work. Lucky us, right? Lucky us Canadians. Anyway, but now to discourage even virtual hearings is wholly inappropriate, affecting access to justice and worsening already significant delays. Ontario's Superior Court of Justice to defer cases due to the pandemic. So they're shutting down the courts, even virtual courts. We can't possibly do that. It still puts people at risk. Can't have virtual courts. Nope. Ezra Levent says, limit Parliament, limit journalists who can cover it, limit access to courts, limit travel, limit churches, limit permission to leave your house. Up next, Trudeau's internet censorship bill will be tabled next month. Very, very concerning. Very, very concerning indeed. Stephen Lisi is announcing, we're doubling the next round of payments to parents during this challenging time. I didn't know we were in a round of negotiations with the education minister. Did you know we were in a round of negotiations with the education minister? All right then. If we're in a round of negotiations, I believe that the entire 12,000 or 11,300 or whatever it is should be on the table for the education for the student for the year, and we can prorate that monthly. No problems. I don't mind monthly payments. That's fine. And how do we get to allocate all of this, right? Like, let's talk brass tacks here, education minister. If we're in a negotiation here, if we're in a funding round, right? We're doubling the next round of payments to parents during this challenging time. Starting tomorrow, parents who received support for learners will automatically be given and begin receiving, this new benefit. New applicants can apply starting May 3rd. So if you've previously gotten money for educational or kids in school, you will also be eligible for this automatically and enrolled automatically for this. It's $400 per kid under the age of in kindergarten to grade 12, and $500 for children under 21 with special needs, which is what is done. Like if a youth under 21 is attending school, they have a right to attend school until they're 21. So often they do, and then they'll be transferred into a day program, right? And there's multiple day programs, but much more access to day programs in places like Kitchener and Toronto than places like Guelph, which I always thought was weird, right? There's not many services in Guelph for day programs. I mean, there are some, but then they shut them down because of cost, because of pay, because legislation came in for fair pay for fair work, but it didn't take into account the agreements being made and blah 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 blah. Anyway, regardless, that's a whole other rabbit hole to dig into. Schools. This is Joseph Marin. I've probably got that wrong. And he says, the futile pursuit of zero COVID may imperil the 2021-22 school year. Widespread coronavirus surveillance testing at schools is a bad idea. And this is a Washington Post editorial about this. I just thought it was interesting that other places are talking about what Ontario's got enacted, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting. This I'm going to talk about on the Rumble show, so I think I'll cut it here. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Unless you're heading over to Rumble to watch the rest of the show, where I talk about things that YouTube doesn't like because, it just doesn't like them for various reasons. YouTube is very sensitive these days, very sensitive. Anyway, join me over on Rumble or BitChute or wherever you get your alternate media, and I'll do the rest of my show there.